back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. That's right, man. Welcome back, Kingdom Builders, Road Trippers. Welcome back to the road trip. If you're new here, my name is Aharon. I'm just here to read for you, all right? Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings, right? All of my mishpachah, my family, my friends, my Akim and Akatim, brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, everybody in the house, shalom, all right, in-laws, all right. All praises, man. And peace and blessings, shalom, right, to your homes, your dwelling places, your children, loved ones, friends, and of course those pets, those little fur babies that we love, right? That's family too, man. All right. All praises to the Most High. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, right? Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, right? Glory to Yahweh Shai, our brother, first fruit, the king, the high priest, the order of Melchizedek, right? The best example, honors to the Ruach, the dove, wisdom. That's right, all praises, man. And my love and my respect goes out to you, all right? It does. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the road trip. Where are we at? What are we doing, huh? What are we doing? Well, we're in the works of Flavius Josephus. All right? We're going to be reading the Jewish Antiquities, the Antiquities of the Yahudim, right? The Hebrews, the Israelites. That's correct. We are here in chapter 7 concerning the garments of the priest and of the high priest. Okay, so they're going to break down that. And, cool. So also, along with that, if you like to follow along, if you have these scrolls available to you, please read with me. Read with your ak, all right? I would love to have you with me, all right? But if not, I'm sure that, they have some online versions of this, but I have not found this particular scroll, online without, having to purchase, basically the book all over again. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, if you do have it, great. If you don't, just sit back and listen and just listen along and enjoy and try to get something out of it. Right? Try to hear it for what it is. All right? And try to break it down. All right. No further ado, ladies and gentlemen, chapter 7 concerning the garments of the priest and of the high priest. Let's begin. Section 1, and it reads, "There were particular garments appointed for the priests, and for all the rest, which they called kohanoe, priestly garments." Let me see that again. Kohanoe, priestly garments, as also for the high priest, which they call kohanoe, rabbi, and denote the high priest's garments. Such was therefore the garments of the rest. But when the priest approached the sacrifices, he purifies himself with the purification which the law prescribes. And in the first place, he puts on that which is called a makanas, which means something that is securely tied. It is a girdle composed of fine twined linen and is put about the privy parts, the feet to be inserted into them, and the nature of breeches. But above half of it is cut off, and it ends at the thighs, and is there tied fast. That is the end of section 1. All right, let's continue on. Yeah, these are some words that I've never read before. Salakia for that. But, let's get through it. All right, let's get ready for section 2. Let's continue. Section 2 reads, "Over this he wore a linen vestment, made of fine flax doubled. It is called chethone, and denotes linen, for we call linen by the name of chethon. This vestment reaches down to the feet and sits close to the body, and has sleeves that are tied fast to the arms. It is girded to the breast a little over above the elbows by a girdle often going around, 4 fingers broad, but so loosely woven that you would think it were the skin of a serpent. It is embroidered with flowers, and scarlet, and purple, and blue, and fine twined linen, but the warp was nothing but fine linen. The beginning of its warp around is at the breast, and when it has gone often around, it is there tied, and hangs loosely there down to the ankles. I mean this. All the time the priest works hard, for this position appears to be most agreeable to the spectators. But when he is obliged to assist at the offering sacrifices, and to do the appointed service, that he may not be hindered in his operations by its motion, he throws it to the left and bears it not on his shoulder. Moshe indeed calls this belt Albaneth, but we have learned from the Babylonians to call it Emaya, for it is by them called. This vestment has no loose or hollow parts anywhere in it, but only a narrow opening about the neck, and it is tied with certain strings hanging down from the edge over the breast and back, and is fastened above each shoulder. It is called mazabezanese. Okay, that's the end of section 2. Cool. There's a new word for me too. All right. Section 3 reads, upon his head he wears a cap not broad of a conic form, nor encircling the whole head, but still covering more than the half of it, which is called masnemathes, and its make is such that it seems to be a crown, being made of thick cloth, but in the texture is of linen. And it is doubled round many times and sewed together, besides which a piece of fine linen covers the whole cap from the upper part and reaches down to the forehead, and hides the seams of the cloth, which would otherwise appear unattractively. This adheres closely upon the solid part of the head, and is there too so firmly fixed, that it may not fall off during a sacred service about the sacrifices. So we have now shown you what is the garments of most of the priests, okay? Let's go! All right, that's the end of section 3. Let's continue on, Mishpachah. Let's go, fam. Let's read. Section 4. The high priest is indeed adorned with the same garments that we have described without omitting one. Only over these he puts on a vestment of a blue color. This also is a long robe reaching to his feet. In our language it is called meir, and it is tied round with a girdle, embroidered with the same colors and flowers as the former, with a mixture of gold interwoven. To the bottom to which garment are hung fringes in color like pomegranates with golden bells by a curious and beautiful contrivance, so that between 2 bells hangs a pomegranate, and between 2 pomegranates a bell. Okay. So there's order in this, okay? Let's continue. Now this vesture was not composed of 2 pieces, nor was it sewed together upon the shoulders and the sides, but it was one long vestment, so woven as to have an opening for the neck, not a sideways one, but parted all along the breast and the back. A border also was sewed to it, lest the opening should look too ragged. It was also parted where the hands were to come out. That's the end of section 4. Selah. Section 5. Besides these, the high priest put on a third garment, which was called the ephod, which resembles the epomis of the Greeks. Its make was after its manner. It was woven to the depth of a cubit, of several colors, with gold intermixed and embroidered, but it left the middle of the breast uncovered. It was made with sleeves also, nor did it appear to be at all differently made from a short coat. But in the void space of the garment there was inserted a piece of the bigness of a span embroidered with gold, and the other colors of the ephod, and was called asin, the breastplate, which in the Greek language signifies the oracle. This piece exactly filled up the void space in the ephod. It was united to it by golden rings at every corner, and like rings being attached to the ephod, and the blue band was made use of to tie them together by those rings. And that the space between the rings might not appear empty, they contrived to fill it up with stitches of blue bands. There was also 2 sardonyxes upon the ephod at the shoulders. That's a stone. Look it up. Spelled Sardonyxes. All right. So sardonyxes. Okay? Upon the ephod, an onyx is a black stone. At the shoulders to fasten it to the nature of buttons, having each end running to the the onyxes of gold, that they might be buttoned by them. On these were engraved the names of the sons of Yaakov in our own country letters and in our own tongue. 6 of each of these stones on either side, and the elder son's names were on the right shoulder. 12 stones also were upon the breastplate, extraordinary in size and beauty, and they were an ornament not to be purchased by men because of their immense value. These stones, however, stood in 3 rows by 4 in row, and were inserted into the breastplate itself, and they were set in settings of gold, that they themselves inserted in the breastplate, and were so made that they might not fall out. So this was fine craftsmanship. Are you paying attention? All right, let's continue. Now, the first 3 stones were the sardonyx, a topaz, and an emerald. The second row containing a carbuncle, a jasper, and a sapphire. The first of the third row was a liger, and an amethyst, and the third an agate, being the 9th of the whole number. The first of the 4th row was a chrysolite. The next was an onyx, and then a beryl, beryl, a beryl, right, which was the last of all. Now the names of all those sons of Yaakov were engraved in these stones, whom we esteem the heads of our tribes, each stone having the honor of a name, and the order according to which they were born. And whereas the rings were too weak of themselves to bear the weight of the stones, they made 2 other rings of larger size at the edge of the part of the breastplate which reached to the neck, and inserted into the very texture of the breastplate to receive chains finely wrought, which connected them with golden bands to the top of the shoulders, whose extremity turned backwards and went into the rings, right, on the prominent back part of the ephod. And this was for the security of the breastplate, that it might not fall out of its place. There was also a girdle sewed to the breastplate, which was of the before mentioned colors, with gold intermixed, which, when it had gone once around, was tied again upon the seam and hung down. There were also golden loops that emitted its fringes at each end of the girdle and included them entirely. That's the end of section 5. What a fine piece of craftsmanship. It's almost like a piece of art, and that was worn by a man, the high priest. Isn't that interesting, man? That's awesome. We've read about this before, but they didn't go into such detail when we read this in the KJV in our previous reads. Okay? Cool. Section 6. The high priest's mitre was the same that was described before, and was wrought like that of all the other priests, above which there was another with stripes of blue embroidered, and around it was a golden crown polished, of 3 rows, one above another, out of which arose a cup of gold, which resembled the herb which we called saccharos, or saccharos. But those Greeks that are skillful in botany call it hyoskamus. I'm not familiar, but those who know plants, you will know. Okay, let's continue. Now, lest anyone that has seen this herb but has not been taught its name, and is unacquainted with its nature, or, having known its name, knows not the herb when he sees it, I shall give such as these are the description of it. This herb is oftentimes in height above 3 spans, but its root is like that of a turnip, for he that should compare it thereto would not be mistaken. But its leaves are like the leaves of mint. Out of its branches it sends out a calyx attached to the branch, and a coat encompasses it, which is naturally sheds. It naturally sheds when it is changing in order to produce its fruit. This calyx is of the bigness of the bone of the little finger. Okay, so that's about the thickness of it. All right, so the stalk is about the size of the little finger, your pinky finger. But in the shape of its opening is like that of a cup. This I will further describe for the use of those that are unacquainted with it. Suppose a sphere be divided into 2 parts, round at the bottom, but having another segment that grows up to a circumference from the bottom. Suppose it become narrower by degrees, and that the cavity of that part grow considerably smaller, and then gradually grow wider again at the brim. Okay, so it kind of swoops in, it gets really skinny, then it widens and spans back out, okay? Kind of circular, almost concave, right? Okay, cool. Or convex. They didn't really specify that, but we know it's semicircular, right? Okay, let's pay attention. All right. Such as we see in the navel of a pomegranate with its notches, and indeed such a coat grows over this plant as renders it a hemisphere. See, a hemisphere, so half a circle, right? And that or half of a sphere. Ooh. So we do know it's bowl-like. It's bowl-like. All right, that answers the question then. There you go. And that, as one may say, turned accurately in a lathe, and having its notches protruding above it, which, as I said, grow like a pomegranate, only that they are sharp, and end in nothing but prickles. Now the fruit of it is preserved by the coat of the calyx, which fruit is like the seed of the herb Sideritis. It sends out a flower that may seem to resemble that of a poppy, like a poppy flower, poppy seeds, okay? Of this was a crown made, as far from the back part of the head of each to the temples. But this Aphelius, for so this calyx may be called, did not cover the forehead, but it was covered by the golden plate, which had inscribed upon it the name of the Most High Yahweh in sacred characters, and which were the ornaments of the high priest. That's talking about his headgear, bro. All right, cool, man. That's the end of section 6. I hope that you were able to follow along with that. I might have to go back and do another reading of that, and I would like to actually put that into a prompt and see what kind of picture comes out with that kind of description. You know what I mean? It's more detailed than the KJV. All right, let's continue to the next one. Section 7 is going to finish up this chapter, and then there's going to be some notes, right? 4 notes, 4 points to be exact. And we'll get through all those, and then we'll get on over to chapter 8. Hallelujah. Selah. Yeah. All right. Section 7 reads, Now here one may wonder at the ill will which men bear to us, and which they profess to bear on account of our despising that deity which they pretend to honor. For if anyone do but consider the fabric of the tabernacle, and take a view of the garments of the high priest, and of those vessels which we make use of in our sacred ministration, right, they will find that our lawgiver was a divine man, and that we are unjustly reproached by others. For if anyone do without prejudice and with judgment look upon these things, he will find they were everyone made in a way of imitation and representation of the universe. When Moshe distinguished the tabernacle into 3 parts, and allowed 2 of them to the priest as a place accessible and common, he denoted the land and the sea, these being of general access to all. But he set apart the 3rd division for Yahweh, because heaven is inaccessible to men. And when he ordered 12 loaves to be set on the table, the shewbread, the 12 loaves, okay? When he ordered them to be set on the table, he denoted the year as distinguished into so many months. By branching out the candlestick into 7 parts, he secretly imitated the decani, or 70 divisions of the planets. He's talking about that, the candlestick, right? He's talking about that where was I at? Okay, right here. Right here, the decani, okay, or 70 divisions of the planets. And as to the 7 lamps upon the candlestick, they refer to the course of the planets, of which that is the number. The veils, too, which were composed of 4 things, they declared the 4 elements. For the fine linen was proper to signify the earth, because the flax grows out of the earth. The purple signifies the sea, because that color is dyed by the blood of the sea shellfish. And blue is fit to signify the air, and the scarlet will naturally be an indication of fire. Now, the vestment of the high priest being made of linen signified the earth. The blue denoted the sky, being like lightning in its pomegranates, and in the noise of the bells resembling thunder. And for the ephod, it showed that the Most High Yahweh had made the universe of 4 elements. And as for the gold interwoven, I suppose it related to the splendor by which all things are enlightened, right? 4 elements, right? We've heard that before in Captain Planet, right? Didn't we? All right, so anyway, let's continue reading. He also appointed the breastplate to be placed in the middle of the ephod to resemble the earth, for that has the very middle place of the world. And the girdle which circled the high priest signified the ocean, for that goes around and includes the universe. Each of the sardonyxes declares to us the sun and the moon, those I mean that were in the nature of buttons on the high priest's shoulders. And for the 12 stones, whether we understand by them the months, or whether we understand the like number of the signs of that circle, which the Greeks call the zodiac, we shall not be mistaken in their meaning. And for the meter, or the mitre, which was of blue color, it seems to me to mean heaven. For how otherwise could the name of the Most High Yahweh be inscribed upon it? That it was also illustrated with a crown, and that of gold also, is because of that splendor with which the Most High is pleased. Let this explanation suffice at present, since the course of my narration will often, right? And on many occasions afford me the opportunity of enlarging upon the virtue of our lawgiver. Right? He's giving homage and respect. All right, that's the end of section 7. Let's read these 4 points of notes, and then we will close out chapter 7 and read the next one. Cool. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into some of these notes on chapter 7. All right, the first note. All right, point number 1, and it reads: the use of these golden bells at the bottom of the high priest's long garment seems to me to have been this, that by shaking his garment at the time of his offering incense in the temple on the great day of atonement, or at other proper periods of his sacred ministrations, there, on the great festivals, the people might have noticed it and might fall on their own prayers at the time of incense or other proper periods. And so the whole congregation might at once offer those common prayers jointly with the high priest himself to the Almighty El Shaddai, right? See reference Luke 1 and 10. Also reference Revelation 8, 3 and 4. All right. Nor probably is the son of Sirach to be otherwise understood when he says of Aharon, the first high priest, reference Ecclesiastes 45 and 9. And the Most High encompassed Aharon with pomegranates and with many golden bells around, that as he went there might be a sound, and a noise made that might be heard in the temple, for a memorial to the children of his people. That's the end of point number 1. All right, cool. I like that. That's good. It's really good. All praises. Amen. Point number 2. The reader ought to take notice here that the very Mosaic pedalon, or golden plate for the forehead of the Jewish, right, the Yahudim high priest, was itself preserved, not only until the days of Josephus, but of Origen. And that is inscription, holiness, right, kodeshness to the Most High, right, to the Adon, was in the Samaritan characters. See Antiquities, book number 8, chapter 3, section 8. Essay on the Old Testament, page 154, and Reland de Pol Templi, page 132. That's the end of section 2. All right, point number 3. When Josephus, both here and in chapter 6, section 4, supposes the tabernacle to have been parted into 3 parts, he seems to esteem the bare entrance to be a third division, distinct from the Kodesh and the most Kodesh places. And this the rather because in the temple afterward there was a real distinct third part, which was called the porch. Otherwise Josephus would contradict his own description of the tabernacle, which gives as a particular account of no more than 2 parts. That's the end of point number 3. Point number 4, to the door, and it reads: this explanation of the mystical meaning of the Yahudim tabernacle and its vessels with the garments of the high priest is taken out of Philo and fitted to Gentile philosophical notions. This may possibly be given in Jewish or in Yahudi greatly versed in heathen learning and philosophy, as Philo had ever been, and as Josephus had long been when he wrote these Antiquities. In the meantime, it is not to be doubted, but in their education they must have both learned more Jewish interpretations, such as we meet with the epistle of Barnabas, and that to the Hebrews and elsewhere among the old Jews, the Yahudim, the Yahudis, right? Accordingly, when Josephus wrote his book of the Jewish War for the use of the Jews, at which time he was comparatively young and less used in Gentile books, we find one specimen of such a Jewish interpretation. For there, reference book 7, chapter 5, section 5, he makes the 7 branches of the temple candlestick with their 7 lamps an emblem of the 7 days of the creation and rest, which are here emblems of the 7 planets. Nor certainly ought ancient Jewish emblems to be explained any other way than according to ancient Jewish and not Gentile notions. See Jewish War, Book 1, Chapter 33, Section 2. That's the end of the last point, and that's the end of Chapter 7. All right? All right. Selah. That's it, Mishpachah, family, friends, Akim and Akatim. That's it. We're going to reconvene on the next one, chapter 8 of the priesthood of Aharon. We're going to start talking about the first high priest of the house of Yasharallah, right? So we're going to get back into that. But thank you for being here with me on this read. I really appreciate it. You know, I hope that you were able to get something out of it. If anything, more detail, you know. And if you're reading this in your KJV, kind of put them side by side as you're hearing me read this and kind of go through this and look at how they're kind of like really detailing out the garments, right? And the holy Kodesh things, and also those holy spaces, those Kodesh spaces, right? Right. The tabernacle. All right. So please be safe out there, right? Shalom and shalom, peace and blessings to your homes, your dwellings, right? Your children, all that good stuff that you need so much in your life, Mishpachah. This is the road trip. So as you're driving up and down the road to and fro, just be safe as you travel, especially if you got those kiddies in the car, all right? So until we read again, you know the program. It's always all praises to the Most High, right? I love you all. I'll talk to you soon. Yeah.